Hello, passwords are the bouncers of the internet, salted, hashed, and sometimes bribable. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about how attackers and defenders use technologies openly available to try to attack these passwords. And we're going to keep it fun, we're going to keep it entertaining and legal, of course. Let's go. My name is Javier Marcos. I'm a security engineer with over 20 years of experience working in the industry. And now I'm going to show you guys how to crack passwords using HashCat. Let's go. First, let's leave something very clear. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only. Running cracking tools against hashes that you don't own or control, it's unfortunately against the law. So we don't want people to get in trouble. But don't worry, we are going to show you guys how to generate hashes. We're going to learn what a hash is, how that applies to the concept of a password, and how to use the tools to just attack them. We're going to keep everything in a safe environment. We're going to use Kali Linux, and let's go for it. First of all, we're going to talk about what is a hash and why that concept means anything when we are talking about passwords and password security. We are going to do some demos about using manipulating hashes and manipulating passwords and cracking them using HashCat. HashCat is an open source tool that is available and heavily used in security, and we are going to run that tool within Kali Linux. The interesting point here is that we are going to look at this from an attacking perspective and a defensive perspective. And we are going to, at the end of the video, we are going to see what measurements or what takeaways you can utilize if you are a defender to protect your passwords more effectively. Let's go. Let's talk about hashes and how do they apply to the concept of a password. We have said that a password can be comparable to a bouncer of the internet. That's basically the key that unlocks all your social media accounts, your banking systems, your emails. But what is a hash? Well, let's talk about the actual concept of a hash or a hash function. A hash function is a one-way function that you get data one way that is generated with different size of data. You're going to always generate the same size of output. And the idea is that it's called a one-way function because the data comes one way. It generates a piece of data. A hash is called a one-way function because it's a transform of an amount of data that generates always the same output. A hash function is called one-way because for different amount of input, it generates always the same amount of output. It generates always the same amount of characters. And it looks like it's nonsense. But the idea is that the data that is used to generate a hash cannot be recovered when you generate the hash. To give you like an analogy, think about toothpaste. When you take the toothpaste out of the tube, it's really hard to put it back in. So that's the same idea. The data that generates a hash should not be recovered. Why are we talking about hashes? Because if you actually take the same amount of data and you generate the hash matches. And that's basically what is the concept of cracking. A cracking tool is just a tool that can generate those hashes very, very fast, and then you just compare them with the original ones. And then that way you can actually recover the password. There are certain things that defenders can use for protecting their passwords, or at least to store safely or to use in a safe way or in a secure way hashing functions. There is certain algorithms like bcrypt, scrypt, argon2. Those are supposed to be cracking. Defenders can use different algorithms to prevent cracking or at least to make it harder. For example, algorithms such as bcrypt, scrypt, argon2, those provide certain countermeasures so a defender can basically feel a bit better about storing their passwords safely by generating a hash that is harder to crack, and also that the idea is to just make the job harder for an attacker that their purpose is to just crack passwords. Let's talk about a different analogy. Like for example, cracking a hash would be equivalent to basically trying hundreds of thousands of cookie recipes until you find the one that has the same taste as the one that you have eaten that you really liked. We have talked about hash functions and how passwords are protected by these one-way functions by making it really hard for those passwords to be recovered. So now we're going to talk about the tools that we are going to use to recover those passwords. and the most, or at least the one that is most popular, is called HashCat. HashCat is considered the world's fastest password cracking tool, and it is true that it's heavily optimized and has been used for so many years. So I would say that it's a pretty good tool if we are going to be doing some cracking. Remember, we are going to be doing all this in our control lab environment within Kali Linux. So now we have installed Kali Linux in our virtual machine. So we have now our system, and we have installed HashCat. With HashCat-H, you are going to see the help for this tool, and like I told you, it's a very powerful tool, and it has a lot of parameters and flags that we can use. For now, I don't want you guys to get lost on all these parameters. I'm going to explain to you the ones that are the mostly used, and we are going to see how HashCat is used for cracking password using different modes. First of all, we have to know what is the type of hash that we are trying to attack, or we are trying to crack. HashCat has its own auto discovery or detection mode to try to get the format of the hash, and it will tell you a list of options of what it thinks that is the hash that we are providing. Otherwise, you just look into the list of all the possible hashes that it supports, and you can provide it via the -m parameter. The other thing that I want to point out is the attack mode. The attack mode is the type of the different approach that HashCat is going to use to try to crack that password. The default mode, or -A0, is the straight. It's going to just generate a lot of hashes based on the list of words. That's using a word list. That is basically a list of all the passwords that are known, or words, English words, any other language, that it will just go generate all those hashes and then compare them with the ones that we are providing. That is the standard brute force type of attack. One of the benefits, or one of the really good strengths of HashCat, is that you can, if you have some sort of intelligence around the password that is used, imagine that the password in other than English language was used, or with a specific format, let's say, that is using the camel case format, which means that, imagine the sentence, my house is red. Every first letter, M, H, R, it would be capital letter. So that would be, you can provide that as the format for HashCat to use. All that information, it comes very handy when you're cracking passwords, and actually reduces the computing time, because, as I told you, HashCat is considered the world's fastest password cracking tool, and it's optimized for GPU or parallelization, which means that doing different jobs or tasks at the same time, and for those, like GPU or graphic cards, are very, very, very powerful. So we have now the correct tool to do this, and now we're going to pretend that we are cracking some passwords that we control. Okay, so for example, let's use the MD5 format for hash. MD5 is a hashing algorithm that is cracked, is not considered secure. You should not be using this hashing algorithm or this hashing function in your production environment. But it's very handy when you want to do tests. So, for example, let's say we're gonna generate some hashes from very common words. For example, here we're gonna generate the hash, the MD5 hash of the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is this string here, right? So we are going to go and it's going to create a brand new file, and we are going to just generate. Let's put the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's actually do something a bit longer. 6, 7, 8. Let's do. We're gonna append this to the file because we don't want to lose it. 6, 7, 8. So that, Let's use something else, like for example, the word password. Now we're gonna use something else. We're gonna use password with capital P. Or now we're gonna use password with capital P and then 1, 2, 3. And for example, let's use also the word hello. And then hello with capital H. So now we have a good amount of hashes in our file. Like, let's see, how many of them do we have? We have now 7. 7 hashes that we can target with HashCat. Now, let's take a look at the help of HashCat. We know that this format, because we have generated those hashes now, we know that the format is MD5. But however, I want you guys to see how HashCat auto-detects that hash. So we are not going to be providing any mode, any of this numeric value for known hashes or the format. So we're going to let HashCat to figure that out. And we are going to go for the attack mode, the default one, which is the one that uses a word list. This one, the straight mode. So we're going to use the attack mode 0. And we are going to be using the word list called RockU. So when we are talking about cracking passwords, it's better to have some sort of intelligence around the password. For example, the format is this way, or it's an English word, or it's a Spanish word. Any information you can provide is always helpful because it will reduce the complexity or the processing time for cracking the password. RockU, it's a very long list of known passwords that has been compiled over time. That can be very handy when you are cracking passwords. And Kali comes with it by default. And let's see how many of them we have in that word list. So now we have that. The word list is in this path, and we are going to count how many of them do we have. Well, it's 14,344,392. So I think we have plenty of options here in this list. For example, just to give you an idea, the type of passwords that are contained in this word list. So if we look in the top of the file, we see something simple, some passwords that are actually pretty simple. But if we look at the tail of the file, you're going to see that are much more complicated text or strings that have been used at some point as a password. Because the magic about the RockU password file or word list is that those are actual passwords that were used in incidents and have been compiled over time. So now we are going to we are not going to specify the mode. We are going to be using the default mode. We are going to have or using our file, and we are using RockU as the we're going to be using RockU as hashes. Yep. And then we are going to be using RockU as the word list. So now we just run. Sorry, they need to specify the hash mode, which, forgot to mention. So in auto-detect mode, it tells you what HashCat thinks that is the format. So now these are all the options that HashCat thinks, okay, I think that the hashes you're providing have this format. They are MD5, so we are going to just provide them -M0. I'm going to see HashCat in action. Okay, now it is working, and you can see how it has extracted every password almost immediately. So we can tell here that the program started at this time, second 53, and then it stopped at second 56. So in 3 seconds, it has cracked every password that we have provided with this process. So you can say that this is a very successful test. We have seen how powerful HashCat is and how it can be used for cracking password hashes. We have seen how to use HashCat to crack passwords. They were simple passwords and they were using a kind of weak algorithm such as MD5, but we have seen that in action. So now you got the practical examples and now you have to go and experience yourself, always in a lab controlled environment. The issues that you might experience with HashCat is to, HashCat is a very fast and heavily performant tool. So the idea is to always choose the correct mode, because if you don't use the correct mode to crack the password, then you are going to be not using your CPU, your computer effectively. You will be losing performance basically. And the idea is to if you have a fast tool and a very efficient tool at your disposal, then you should use it effectively, right? So always be very aware of the power of your computer and perhaps even using a GPU, because the benefit of HashCat is that it's very powerful using parallelization and utilizing GPU power. So keep that in mind, always using HashCat. The other things that is a bit of a gotcha is using the wrong hash or targeting the wrong hash. You have to be aware of what is the hash you're using or you're targeting for cracking. And because if you use the incorrect one, then you're going to be, again, not using your CPU effectively. And actually, hash cracking tools can warm up your computer quite a bit. So be careful with that. And also, temperature always degrades the performance for CPU. So keep in mind for that. There might be the cases where if you are actually looking into hashes that are salted or randomized or something like that, keep that in mind. And always learn how to use hashtag, look at the documentation, and perhaps you might want to look into the masking, the format, how to define the patterns for the password. All that is, you can use that with HashCat, and it's a tool that it's super easy to use and very powerful. Now, the point of cracking passwords is to be able to assess what is the security posture of your application. Like let's say that you are developing an application, you're storing the hash of a password. You should never store the password, by the way, but you are generating a hash to be stored, to be able to match it with a user logs in. We can look into this video in two ways. We can learn how to use HashCat from an attacking perspective or from an offensive perspective. So you learn how to crack those passwords, or at least be aware of how long it takes for those to be cracked. But at the same time, from a defensive perspective, you can always be aware of how strong or weak your systems are by learning and understanding how long it takes for an attacker to crack your security, the hashes of your passwords. So being aware of those details is very important. You want to design your systems to be as strong as they can, and you have to be aware of the weak point. Remember, always use secure algorithms for hashing. Bcrypt, scrypt, Argon2, that's the one that you should be using in the last few years. That's the most popular one. And don't think that just by hashing a password, just like that's foolproof. There is always ways, and attackers might actually have access to very powerful infrastructure. So if such a powerful tool like HashCat is openly available, then think about that attackers might have access to other tools. And I want to finish with giving some advices when you are designing a system, having a defensive mindset, or keeping in mind always how to increase or to maintain a good security posture for your systems. So the first and foremost thing is to use slow algorithms. Use algorithms that are strong, that are not known for being weak, such as like Bcrypt, Argon2. I would recommend those two. Scrypt as well. Don't use SHA-1 or MD5. Those are broken and considered insecure. When you are enforce strong password policies to your users, because strong passwords are harder to crack, or at least attackers need to be more creative when they need to crack them. The other thing that is actually important is when you are looking at the password complexity, sometimes what it seems to be harder for humans is not as hard as you might think. So for example, using passwords that are lowercase, uppercase, number, special characters, all those things, it might actually be much harder to use dictionary words that are concatenated in a specific way, not following many like patterns that are recognizable, because that actually you might end up with a stronger hash. For the online systems, implement always throttling or rate limiting policies. That way, actually, that adds another passive protection for your systems that actually slows down the attacker. So if they cannot just check the validity of a password or a hash, that would be a good step to take. And always monitor online for potential leaks of past sites that have been breached, because those hashes, actually, that is what the attackers crack and they use to at least identify password reuse. So for example, imagine that you have your email in a website that you forgot about it, and then you were using the same password for all those, like a couple or a number of websites. That password should be considered insecure. Don't reuse passwords. That's another good advice, but always keep that in mind. And every time you can, use multi-factor authentication, hardware tokens. That is the best way you can do it. Then TOTP, and if you can, don't use the SMS MFA, but use what you can. Having any MFA will always slow down an attacker. And well, this has been an introduction to cracking passwords using HashCat. If you are interested in cybersecurity, tutorials, learning a little bit more about the industry itself, then subscribe, and we will be uploading more videos around the topic. Thank you.